once again, the leaks were real.
You guys really gotta start giving me a little trust, and not just when I debunk a leak, but also when I say something's legit. Hi everyone, Sonic Show Jaden here. So Sega just announced 5 new games, and the only one I had previously seen was Jet Set Radio from the leaks that got confirmed just a few months ago. But at the end of this trailer, there's even mentions there's actually more than these 5 titles in development, and I'll go into it towards the end, but a lot of people, including my Sonic Tuber friends, think this is hinting towards a Sonic Adventure remake, and they just didn't want to steal the show from the other 5 games, which, let's be honest, if they showed Sonic Adventure, it totally would have. But now, every single one of these teases is very short, but I'm going to be going through them and analyzing what it is we're actually looking at, as I think all of these remakes are in their best forms possible to be new and interesting. Even the Shinobi remake is hand-drawn, which actually looks insane, and that's all for a decently small IP, so it unfortunately confirms my theory back from the interview Azuka had, where he specifically says they were gonna make Sonic Superstars hand-drawn, but decided against it purely for art style reasons and thinking hand-drawn would be more niche and 2.5D would be more appealing, which at the time most people thought Sega just went with the 2.5D graphics solely because it was cheaper to make and produce, but it actually turns out they really were telling the truth since they are doing it for this. Yes, they unironically thought we would like a 2.5D game way more than a hand-drawn game. Just let that sink in for a moment. Now, these remakes are almost certainly going to be the biggest and most impactful phase, at least for us, in Sega's 5-year super game plan, which this is the phase they've defined in their financial reports as the revitalizing of legacy IP with from-the-ground-up remakes of our favorite Sega games. There's a bunch of quick cuts that show off a lot very rapidly, and there's a ton of hidden stuff here. But with these 5 titles, we get reveal gameplay of them all at once, something that, as far as I can find in my research, has never happened ever before in the entire history of gaming. The 5 games we'll be going through before Sonic Adventure are Jet Set Radio, Shinobi, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, Crazy Taxi, and according to Sega, there's more games than this. The overall Sega COO and CEO of Sega America, Shuji Utsumi, in an official statement to Crunchyroll News of all sources, writes, "In recent years, Sonic the Hedgehog has forged new paths for Sega, bringing the franchise to life and reaching new audiences in ways we had only dreamed of in the past. Building off that success, we are digging into our legacy and reimagining several franchises to bring these games to more audiences around the globe. Today's announcement is just the start of our initiative. First and foremost, our ambition will be to create great games with memorable characters and worlds. We hope fans of all ages will look towards our future with anticipation as we release these projects in the coming years." Meaning that yes, throughout these next 5 years in particular, we're finally beginning to see what Sega's been outlining in these yearly financial statements for at least the past few years now, and I've been covering them every time. To expand audiences and leverage reignited fan bases into their real super game, they're going to be doing the major revival of all their big IP, all leading up to Sega's final phase in the Super Game Plan. The Super Game itself will be a larger, likely free-to-play game that includes their entire roster of IP in that one title. Think sort of how Fortnite does these type of collabs, but obviously with an entirely different base game underneath, and in that base game, more gameplay mechanics directly tied to Sega's big franchises. Now, let's get into the games themselves, and obviously before I do, I'm forced to tell you this. Do the like, do the subscribe. This video has no chance if I don't do that, so do it! Okay, now that that's out of the way, there's actually a pretty decent bit of details we know on all these titles, but I want to focus on one game at a time, so let's start with one of the biggest surprises of the night that I'm so unbelievably excited for. Crazy Taxi! Oh baby. One of the biggest Sega franchises to disappear with complete radio silence, and with not even any spiritual successors on the market. Something Jet Set Radio has been at least lucky enough to receive a good handful of, whether it's Bomb Rush Cyber, Hover, and a multitude of others. But for Crazy Taxi, the last real Crazy Taxi game was Crazy Taxi 3, and it released in 2002. Ever since then, it's been very mid-mobile and other spin-offs. One was Game Boy, and they don't feature the core mechanic and gameplay that made the series an instant arcade hit with its very first title. One thing that immediately stuck out to me, and I haven't seen a single soul mention, is that this is seemingly a multiplayer-focused game, or at least that's a big aspect to it. A new twist Crazy Taxi has never really explored before. Also, you not only see the 2 taxis driving simultaneously, but the gameplay part goes from the taxi to the cop car behind them, and sometimes doing chases like these add to mix up the gameplay from just picking up and dropping off passengers repetitively simply over and over again. I want to be Crazy Taxi, not Boring Taxi. This is one of Sega's biggest IPs, and I think it's only one of a small handful to have a big impression in the arcade industry. So to see this come back and hopefully get a new arcade machine is something I'm really looking forward to. Next, I want to cover Streets of Rage, solely because it's the shortest of any of the ones here, and I kind of want to cover everything quickly so I can spend the most time on what we're all actually excited about.
Jet Set Radio.
Now, of these 5 franchises, Streets of Rage is actually the only one to have a decently recent release with a brand new game, and that game's success directly ties to this, because that game actually wasn't published by Sega, as the deal isn't public, but assumedly, another publisher from, yes, there, offered to license it from Sega, and they believed in the project and developers when Sega wouldn't. And once that game became a hit success, both critically and financially, with an overwhelming majority of reviews being very positive, and according to their last financial report in April of 2021, Streets of Rage 4 sold more than 2.5 million copies worldwide, which for a 4th game in a small series from the 90s is incredible, and shows that if all you focus on is making a fun and quality game, word of mouth will spread it like wildfire, and in the day of social media and messaging, you will have a nearly guaranteed success. And with all these 90s gaming genres that Sega was excellent at creating, having all been revived in the past few years, this seems like the perfect time to weigh in with their own attempts on the genre. You know, the one they pioneered. Now, this is the first fully 3D Streets of Rage, and if you've ever played any games from the beat-em-up genre, you'll know 2D and a fully 3D based game play very differently. That said, I'm really excited to see Sega's take on a 3D beat-em-up game, and that's a genre that's also kind of fallen to the wayside since the 2010s with the Arkham games and many others I can't think of right now. But with Streets of Rage being one of the premier beat-em-up games, I don't know if it'll be good, but I am intrigued to see how Sega works this out in 3D.
Now next,
I'm essentially going to speedrun through covering Shinobi, because while it does look gorgeous and looks like a really fun 2D platformer, something Sega always excels at, I have already mentioned that it's hand-drawn, and other than that, there's not really too much to say about this one. I will say, this is likely to be the most quality amongst all the games, at least on a guaranteed scale, not just for the graphic style, but the level design and different gameplay elements we see, like incorporating the dog Yamato, as well as the seemingly massive boss in the background and the smaller boss you see. I'd be lying if I didn't say this looks really fun. Sega's always been good at 2D platformers, with their biggest issues often being the look and aesthetics of them. So with how pretty this game is, I actually think it's a fairly safe bet for a quality title. The real question for a game like this is, will the price point match the audience's expectation of a 2D platformer? That's yet to be seen or heard for now, but will probably come up at some point, and you can go back to this in a few years. Will likely erupt into some kind of petty dumb drama on Twitter. Now, last thing before I get to spill my load everywhere with Jet Set Radio, and I'm referring to a load of news, of course. That's obviously what I meant. I first want to talk about the only game that I personally don't think looks that impressive at all, and that's Golden Axe. Now, this doesn't look awful, and I'm very well aware some of these games are super early in progress, and they're just showing off enough to announce that they're in development, while not just giving us a cinematics only trailer or some JPEG announcing it's in development. Man, that would have been so lame. So this is definitely the coolest way to do it. However, they showed very little of this title as well, and the little we see looks like most of the games in the genre, but honestly a little worse. Whether it's Dark Souls, Baldur's Gate, or Conan, which coincidentally, 2 of those games let you customize the size of your little guy down under. Regardless, I can name like 50 games that seemingly do this combat style nearly perfect. And the gameplay we see from Golden Axe does look kinda clunky, especially in the very short part where he's kinda clipping while walking up a set of stairs, something that in retrospect, literally any other section of the gameplay would probably be a better demonstration than that. It's about less than a second, which just makes me think they should have cut it more. Now again, all of these titles are very early in development, but graphically, this game looks like something they could have made in the early PS3 era, around 2005 to 6. The only difference being slightly fancier modern lighting. Still, this is in no way awful or horrendous, and I'm not trying to seem like a doom and gloom critic, or even that negative since there really isn't much to judge it by, but I am saying it's easily the one I have the least faith in how it plays and is received. But who knows, this one is likely quite far away in terms of release, so maybe it'll make many major changes until then. I don't know. I, of course, am holding out any actual judgment until we get way closer and actually see more gameplay, but as far as first impressions go, this particular title left me with a pretty weak one. But with that out of the way, let's now move on to the franchise that, let's be real, more than only 100 of you guys have ever played. I'm sorry, Golden Axe, but we all know Jet Set Radio is the fan favorite here. And with the knowledge of the leak that came out a few months ago, combined with the gameplay they just showed us, actually gives us quite quite a decent bit of info in this. So as many of you might have noticed, the designs and characters in this game are based and upgraded from the original Jet Set Radio, but seemingly have no ties to Jet Set Radio Future, and we also don't see any elements from its sequel appear here, which is mildly disappointing as, man, Jet Set Radio Future is awesome. Unfortunately, it's not backwards compatible on basically anything, so your options are to have a working 360, original Xbox, or emulate it, meaning it's basically abandonware, which is sad because Jet Set Radio Future is widely and vastly considered an improvement in terms of gameplay, level design, and even sound design from the first game. From Beat's outfit to Professor K looking nothing like the Future version, to even the outfits of Gum and Combo from the leak that came out a few months ago. However, this seemingly does take inspiration from Jet Set Radio in a single way, and that's the way that game tried to leverage the original Xbox's increased performance from the Dreamcast to be a semi-open world. The big difference here being the loading between every zone, which with how technology evolved is no longer needed. And unless you're flying like 1,000,000 miles an hour, which you're not in Jet Set Radio, traversing into different zones like that is no longer the complex task it used to be in the early 2000s. And if they changed nothing from Future except technological advancements, I actually still think it would be a hit game. So I'm feeling quite confident in this one, but we still should keep an open mind as, would it really be the first time Sega's ever dropped the ball and disappointed us? Now, one thing I want to talk about gameplay-wise is something Jet Set Radio is known for that I think is going to be here, but I'm a little worried about, and that's the same Tony Hawk-inspired action, where you're able to traverse across the entire level, going from wall to platform to rail without barely touching the floor at all. A type of freedom and choice these games give you that I absolutely love, and they nailed so perfectly in Jet Set Radio Future that I just want them to base the physics and controls off of that. Obviously with some modernizations we didn't have before, but kind of hard to fix what's nearly perfect. Now, the last topic I want to touch on is something my friend Matt brought up after the Game Awards ended and we discussed the show, and that's that since this announcement clearly indicates them wanting to bring all their biggest hits to proper form, especially with the plus more at the end, that we are likely to see a Sonic Adventure remake come out of this. And he thinks that they didn't want to show that here, because not only would it take all the sales out of the other 5 games, and I kind of agree on that part, it would make much more sense for them to wait for a Sonic Central to do that, and I'm going to cover it in its own video soon, but a leak that I'm super close to confirming mentions info about a Sonic game release in 2024. And it's not clear if that's going to be a remake or just a different game from another studio. So that title could be this. And just like Jet Set Radio and Crazy Taxi has been in development for a while and is a lot closer than we think. Now, Kishimoto has made it very clear that after the success of Frontiers, the next game will use the elements introduced there to make a brand new adventure-style game. And in his time on Twitter, he's probably said this about 100 times now. So an adventure remake makes perfect sense because if Sonic Team wants to release a brand new adventure title, like almost all franchises, after the series has been lying dormant for so long, a remaster or remake, hopefully the latter, will introduce new fans to the adventure series and reintroduce older ones who left since then. This will almost certainly be one of the biggest Sonic releases ever. And with how much of a household name the adventure series is to really anyone who's into gaming, I assume both the remake and new game are going to get a ton of hype and attention from this. It's actually kind of wild these games haven't gotten a remake or proper remaster before, but it's likely because this is such a valuable goldmine that if the Sonic team who is constantly messing up the franchise were to work on this remake in the 2010s, we would have zero respect left for anything Sonic Team ever again, and all their future titles would probably suffer as a result. Now again, to be clear, I'm not saying they're
For sure is a Sonic Adventure remake.
but I want to put that out there because I do see the logic behind this theory. And while, unlike Smash Mouth, I'm not quite a believer yet, I am keeping an open mind for this. And the next time a Sonic Central shows up, you bet your hard-earned money I'm going to be there live covering it. I could be in the hospital walking towards the light and I'm still going live for Sonic Central. Okay, actually, I probably wouldn't in that case. But yeah, I'm thinking we're back. So lots to look forward to. You made it this far, so the video probably didn't suck too badly. Go drop a like, double check your sub to the supreme #1 source of all Sonic news. Join my Discord server where I try to be active, and soon we'll be doing movie nights there, maybe on a weekly basis too. Not sure, but I am always thinking of new ways to engage with my community in a fresh new way. I generally plug my Twitter, but I just found out I have a search suggestions ban. So go follow my Instagram. You know what? I'm done. And I'll see you in a couple days. Lots of love and peace. Peace!
Back, yeah, I'm never better. Sonic show back and I've never been better. Little raccoon and he's getting cheddar. Little raccoon that made me some cheddar. I'm whipping leaves, yeah, I'm getting lettuce. I'm whipping leaves and I'm getting cheddar. I delete tweets so I can feel better. I'm making peace so I can be better.